What happens when this world's deadliest assassin tries to escape his bloody past, but the shadows of his enemies never let him go? Meet Arthur, a man who once spread terror across continents, feared by criminals and governments alike. Today, he lives on his luxurious yacht, enjoying music and coffee under the open sky, appearing just like any other retired man. But beneath this calm life, he hides the instincts of a hunter, always alert, always ready. One evening, while visiting a mountain spot filled with tourists, Arthur's peaceful routine is shattered. A mysterious, beautiful woman walks up and sits across from him. At first, it seems like a casual encounter, but soon, her real intentions are revealed. She demands Arthur carry out 3 assassinations, each one staged as an accident, something only he could pull off. And if he dares to refuse, she will expose his location to his enemies, instantly turning his quiet retirement into a living nightmare. This is where the story begins. The woman thought she had trapped Arthur in her game, but unexpectedly, Arthur pulled out his phone and clicked a picture of her. The color drained from her face. She secretly tried to pull out her gun, but Arthur slammed her against the table and knocked her unconscious. Immediately after, he turned to face the thugs who had been waiting nearby. Even though Arthur was surrounded by enemies, he fought them using whatever he could find around him. He turned the seafood buffet party inside the restaurant into a bloody battleground. Soon, he noticed on the surveillance monitors that even more enemies were advancing. Arthur did not want to prolong the fight, so he jumped down from a high platform. The woman quickly chased after him with her men. To descend the mountain, they had to take a cable car. The assassins stormed inside the cabin, but Arthur was nowhere to be found. Suddenly, the woman heard a noise from above. It turned out Arthur had been hiding on the roof of the cabin. She immediately fired bullets through the roof, then tried to bravely climb up by kicking the cabin door. But Arthur was even braver. He leapt off the high cable car and landed firmly on a hang glider, soaring away right in front of the woman's eyes. It was an incredibly spectacular escape. That night, Arthur quietly returned home, only to find some strangers already on his yacht. They were the same people he had fought earlier in the day. Arthur pressed a button on his phone, activating his yacht's defense system. His $500,000 yacht was engulfed in flames and destroyed. After this, Arthur went to his warehouse district. Inside one warehouse, he had a secret hideout. He burned his old fake passports, collected new ones along with cash, and disappeared once again. This time, Arthur traveled to the island of Koh Lipe in Thailand, a place of breathtaking beauty. There, he met an old friend. Years ago, he had been here and May, the woman he trusted, had always kept her small wooden house ready for him to stay in. As a dangerous assassin with years of experience, Arthur always had secret safe houses across the world. He could disappear for as long as he wanted. When they left, Arthur retrieved a long sealed box hidden under the floor containing a computer and necessary equipment. He uploaded the picture of the woman onto the internet and began investigating her. Eventually, he discovered information about her. But when he saw a photo of her boss, Arthur was hit with a headache because it was someone he had known for a very long time. He realized he would need to go into hiding once again, but it seemed no matter where he went, someone would always find him. One day, Arthur saw a beautiful stranger arriving on the island. This woman met May and asked her for medicine for her wounds. Seeing the girl injured and covered in blood, May felt sympathy for her. That night, May heard the sound of a man and woman quarreling on a yacht. She immediately asked Arthur to help rescue the beautiful girl. At first, Arthur didn't want to get involved, but he couldn't refuse May's request, so he took a small boat and went toward the yacht. There, a large man was grabbing the woman and hurling insults at her. Seeing Arthur board the yacht, the man mistreated the girl even more. Then he picked up a grenade launcher to challenge Arthur. Within moments, Arthur had taken him down. Unfortunately, the man's head slammed into an iron block, killing him instantly. In that same moment, the woman fainted. Arthur handed the unconscious girl over to May and stayed behind to deal with the aftermath. He searched the cabin and discovered the girl's passport and phone. To his shock, the phone contained a photo of himself. Clearly, this was no coincidence. It was all a setup to frame Arthur. Arthur sailed the yacht into deep waters and burned it to ashes. Furious, he returned home. Presenting the girl's passport, he asked her, whose name was Gina, why his picture was on her phone. At first, Gina wanted to resist, but realizing she could not fight Arthur, she confessed everything. She admitted that Crane had carefully plotted everything. He deliberately made contact with Arthur, forcing his way into Arthur's life. Once Arthur began to develop feelings for Gina, Crane staged her kidnapping so that Arthur would have no choice but to work for him. Arthur, however, was fully aware of Crane's manipulations. He didn't blame Gina because he knew Crane was only using her as bait to get to him. Wanting to know more about Gina, Arthur searched online and, to his surprise, discovered she was far from ordinary. She had once been a member of an elite special forces team before retiring to open an orphanage in Myanmar, dedicated to raising and educating children. But Crane, always ruthless, had kidnapped the orphans to force Gina into his service. Realizing that she was trapped in this dangerous game only because of him, Arthur began to lower his guard around her. The next day, he spotted a strange little boat hovering just off the shore. A man aboard was keeping a close watch on everything happening on land. Arthur instantly understood. Crane had sent someone else to keep tabs on him. To maintain appearances, Arthur deliberately took Gina's hand, ensuring the observers would believe their bond was genuine. Together, Arthur and Gina attended a party hosted by May. With May's subtle encouragement, the two began to grow closer, slowly developing genuine feelings for one another. Arthur knew from the very beginning this was all part of Crane's trap, but he found himself powerless to resist Gina's warm smile and gentle nature. For once, he let himself sink into that tenderness. Eventually, Arthur revealed to Gina why Crane had always been after him. He confessed that as a child, he had been an orphan, sold into a London gang. Crane, too, had been part of that same gang. But while Arthur managed to escape, Crane never could. The gang vented all their rage on Crane, and from that day on, he harbored a deep hatred toward Arthur, vowing to one day take revenge. Even if Gina had never entered the picture, Arthur knew Crane would have found another way to come after him. And finally, that day had arrived. Several speedboats filled with gang members raced straight toward them. Arthur told Gina he would find a way to get her out, but the enemies were simply too many. Gina was captured, and Arthur himself was taken to Bangkok. There, a beautiful woman searched him thoroughly before escorting him to a chair. The moment he sat down, a bomb hidden beneath it armed itself. One press of the remote, and he would be blown to pieces. At that very moment, Crane appeared. No longer the companion Arthur once knew, but now his sworn enemy. Without wasting words, Crane laid out his demand. Arthur must eliminate 3 specific targets. Only then would Gina be released. The first target was one of Africa's most brutal arms dealers. For his own safety, he had locked himself inside a prison built on a remote island surrounded by deadly sharks. It was the perfect fortress, impossible for anyone to approach. But Crane needed Arthur, because only he could infiltrate such a place and make the kill look like a suicide. That was Arthur's specialty. Before beginning, Arthur meticulously drew up a plan. To blend in, he tattooed his face, posing as a dangerous criminal. He purchased shark repellent and carefully concealed miniature explosives on his body, hidden like pieces of chewing gum. Then he staged a drunken rampage in the street, ensuring he would be arrested. The police quickly labeled him as a dangerous offender and transferred him, by boat, to the island prison. At intake, the guards confiscated his lighter but returned the rest of his non-essential belongings. Soon after, Arthur finally came face to face with the arms dealer, who was heavily guarded. But Arthur noticed something else: a long-haired man preparing to make a move, and a fat inmate stealthily gripping a sharp blade. Arthur noticed a man making a deal for a knife. During lunch, he deliberately bumped into the fat man and stole the knife from him. Later, the long-haired man finally made his move. He removed his artificial arm, revealing a dagger hidden inside it. He charged straight at the arms dealer. Arthur seized the moment and at the right time threw the knife, killing the long-haired man instantly. The arms dealer realized that Arthur had just saved his life. Impressed by his skill, he invited Arthur to have a meal with him. Although Arthur usually disliked being around too many people, this was the first time the arms dealer was meeting an outsider, and he became excited. He agreed to dine only with Arthur, no one else. Arthur entered the dealer's private cell, and the two sat together. The arms dealer began talking about the times he had narrowly escaped death at sea, but he had no idea that his own death was now just moments away. Arthur moved behind him, strangled him quietly, and pushed him toward the window so that the guards outside wouldn't hear any sound. He stuffed a cloth into the dealer's mouth, rendering him unconscious. To make the death look like a suicide, Arthur mixed heroin into the powder the dealer usually consumed and forced him to inhale it all. Within seconds, the dealer's body stiffened. Foam started coming out of his mouth. He convulsed for a short while, and then he died. When the guards outside heard some noises and rushed in, they only saw the arms dealer sitting in front of an altar as if he were praying. They had no idea he was already dead. After completing the mission, Arthur went to the training yard and stuck one of his small gum-sized bombs to the wall. He then pulled out a fuse from a cigarette and lit it. At the same time, he activated a communication signal for Crane. Just then, a guard spotted him and rushed forward. Arthur quickly tore off his shirt and rubbed shark repellent all over his muscular body. A powerful explosion went off. The wall beside Arthur cracked open, leaving a massive hole. Without wasting a moment, Arthur climbed through it and jumped straight into the sea. Thanks to the shark repellent, he had no fear of the surrounding fish or predators. Nearby, a fishing boat was pulling in its nets. But strangely, the nets were completely empty. While the captain was still puzzled, Arthur was already standing right behind him. Arthur then contacted Crane through a video call, confirming that Gina was still alive. But Crane wasted no time. He immediately gave Arthur details of the second target. This time, it was a mining tycoon living in Sydney, Australia. The man resided at the very top floor of a skyscraper more than 100 stories tall. His security detail was extremely tight. The rooftop apartment even had a private swimming pool. All the walls were reinforced, and the steel doors were 2 meters thick, making a direct assault impossible. Arthur once again began planning carefully. He disguised himself as a wealthy businessman interested in buying an apartment in the same building. A female real estate agent showed him one of the mid-level apartments. While she was distracted on a phone call, Arthur discreetly snapped a picture of the apartment key. With this, he started preparing his assassination. He created a special chemical and coated it onto tempered glass with a special gel. After injecting the chemical, the glass shattered within just 15 seconds. Arthur launched the operation. Disguised as a repairman, he entered the building using a fake key. Inside, he cut through a glass window and began climbing freely, using strong suction cups for support. With a drill, he made a small hole in the tempered glass of the rooftop pool. He injected his special gel, then pumped in the chemical. At that very moment, the tycoon was swimming right above Arthur. Suddenly, the glass cracked, startling the tycoon, who tried to swim away in panic. Arthur quickly detached his suction cups and slid back down towards safety. The crack widened and the pool gave way. The tycoon had no chance of escape. Arthur left the building safely. Mission accomplished. Crane's assistant then set up a video call between Arthur and Gina. Taking advantage of a brief distraction, Gina cleverly adjusted the camera angle. During their conversation, she deliberately raised her hand, allowing Arthur to see details in the background. Sharp-eyed, Arthur spotted the ship's identification number through the window. Although the assistant eventually noticed and angrily cut the call, it was too late. Arthur had already figured out Gina's exact location. Without wasting time, Arthur prepared a helicopter to move in. Arthur boarded the helicopter and headed toward the location, but by the time he arrived, the ship had already departed. Believing that the vessel couldn't have gone too far, Arthur ordered the pilot to continue the search. Eventually, they spotted the silhouette of the ship out at sea. Fully armed, Arthur dove into the ocean and secretly climbed aboard. One by one, he eliminated the bodyguards. But Crane had already anticipated Arthur's arrival. He had set up an ambush team on the ship. A hail of bullets came Arthur's way, and though he tried to dodge them, the sound of Gina's screams made him even more desperate. Climbing up onto the deck, he found himself surrounded by a group of men. Arthur yanked the pin out of one bodyguard's grenade and used his bulletproof vest as a shield. Just as he tried to stand, an electric shock struck his thigh. Arthur was captured and dragged before Crane. Surprisingly, Crane did not harm him. He still needed Arthur alive to kill the third target. As soon as Crane ordered his men to take Arthur away, Arthur suddenly smashed through a glass door and leapt into the sea. But this attempt to rescue Gina had failed. Arthur was forced to continue with the third mission. The final target was Adams, a major arms dealer living in Bulgaria. He was America's biggest weapons supplier and lived inside a heavily fortified castle with state-of-the-art security. Beneath the castle was a submarine base, housing an intercontinental ballistic missile submarine, the very thing Crane wanted most. The only way inside the fortress was through the helipad on the roof, making this Arthur's most difficult mission yet. While preparing, Arthur discovered that the 3 people Crane wanted dead were actually his biggest rivals. If all 3 were eliminated, Crane would become a dominant force in the global arms trade. Arthur then formed a bold plan. He went to the nearest hospital to the castle. On its rooftop stood a rescue helicopter. Lying on his stomach, Arthur used a sniper rifle to target one of the guards on the castle rooftop. His shot hit, non-lethal, but enough to require urgent medical treatment. As expected, the hospital received an emergency call from the fortress, and the rescue helicopter immediately set off. Arthur was already hidden inside. When the helicopter landed on the helipad, all the guards were distracted, rushing to care for the injured man. Silently, Arthur slipped into the castle. He deliberately triggered the alarm, causing Adams to panic. In fear for his life, Adams rushed into a secure panic room and locked the heavy door, only to discover Arthur sitting calmly inside, waiting for him all along. Shocked even more, Adams realized Arthur wasn't there to kill him. Instead, he wanted to negotiate a deal. The next day, Adams walked alone to the submarine base, stepping onto a suspended walkway, but Arthur had already rigged it with explosives. In a flash, a massive blast hurled Adams into the water. Arthur was waiting below with scuba gear. He placed an oxygen mask on Adams and took him to a secret island. It was revealed that this had been their hidden plan all along. Arthur had staged Adams's death. By making him disappear for a few days, they fooled Crane into believing Adams was truly dead. Crane fell into the trap and immediately dispatched his assistant and a team of gunmen to seize Adams's submarine base. But Arthur was already there. He had prepared traps in advance, turning the base into a slaughterhouse. About 10 of Crane's armed men stormed in, only to be massacred. From the shadows, Arthur unleashed chaos. An automated machine gun from the second floor mowed down several instantly. Others tried to break through the steel doors, but grenades and gunfire tore them apart. Only Crane's cowardly assistant remained alive. He panicked, leapt into the submarine, and tried to seal the hatch. But Arthur tossed a grenade inside, blowing him to pieces. Crane, watching the scene unfold through surveillance monitors, ground his teeth in fury as he saw his men completely annihilated. Arthur then commandeered a submarine and set course straight toward Crane. Both men knew the final decisive battle was about to begin. But Crane had one last card to play: Gina, Arthur's beloved. Crane dragged her out to the front of the ship, placing her in plain sight to shield himself, waiting to lure Arthur into his trap. But Arthur was not so easily fooled. Steering close, he boarded the ship and immediately engaged in brutal knife combat. His strikes were ruthless and precise. Knowing Crane was watching, Arthur deliberately smashed the surveillance camera with his blade. Crane realized Arthur's rage was beyond control and doubted he could withstand it. Crane pulled Gina into the control room and began adjusting the control panel. It was then revealed he had already planted time bombs throughout the ship. He set the countdown, leaving only 3 minutes until detonation. Meanwhile, Arthur reached the second deck, single-handedly battling through a wave of gunmen. In his fury, he was like a war god, mercilessly cutting them down, unstoppable. He finally stormed into the control room, only to find Crane gone, leaving Gina behind. Just as Arthur felt relief, he heard the beeping of the countdown timer. There was no time left to escape with Gina. He rushed her into a lifeboat, sealed the hatch, and forced her to escape alone. At the same time, Crane ordered his remaining men to hunt Arthur down while he prepared to flee the ship. But Arthur wasn't about to let him get away. He chased Crane toward the escape craft and attacked just as it was being lowered. Crane refused to surrender. He grabbed a machine gun and fired wildly at Arthur, cutting the ropes so that the escape vessel crashed down on him. Then, grabbing a steel rod, Crane struck furiously. The two men, once childhood friends, now bitter enemies, clashed in a savage final duel. But it was clear, Crane was no match for Arthur. Crane had carried deep hatred for Arthur since childhood. Now, with only 1 minute left on the bomb's countdown, Crane put everything on the line for one final strike. Grabbing an iron hook, he charged at Arthur. But Arthur reacted instantly. He wrapped a chain tightly around Crane's neck, restraining him so he couldn't move. Arthur was ready to make Crane pay for all he had done. But Crane shouted in defiance, believing that even if he died, Arthur would also be killed in the explosion. As Arthur began to walk away, Crane cried out his name in desperation. Moments later, the ship was blown to pieces. Gina's lifeboat floated up to the surface and she landed safely, but Arthur was nowhere to be seen. Heartbroken and devastated, Gina lost all hope while Adams stood nearby, lost in thought. As he was leaving, Adams noticed a camera fixed to a post. Late that night, he reviewed the footage. The camera was pointed directly at the ship's burned anchor locker. Looking into it, he realized that the space was small, but just strong enough to hold one person. In the video, he spotted a familiar figure. It was Arthur. Adams smiled faintly, then immediately deleted the footage, knowing this was the only way he could continue surviving in this dangerous business. Meanwhile, Gina returned to her school in Cambodia. She tried to start her life again, though sorrow still lingered heavily in her heart. But one day, she suddenly saw a familiar figure appear before her eyes. In that moment, she knew that from now on, she would never be separated from her true love again.